During this week, the latest statistics on crime made pretty much for grim reading if you got into the detail, talking about shoplifting surging 25% in a year. I think we all know that. And with knife and gun crimes increasing, robberies and car thefts up. But interestingly, overall crime is down, according to the survey that reports this. That's what's called the Crime Survey for England and Wales that looks at households. So do you feel safer in the knowledge that overall crime is coming down? Or like me, are you pretty shocked that we are seeing effectively 1,000 shoplifting reported cases, to the police that is, a day? Pretty much the same when it comes to car crimes, actually higher. Knife crime offences up 3% on 50,000. That's about 150 a day, and on it goes. So I'm asking you, do you feel safer? 0344 499 1000. And to help navigate this conversation with me, I'm really pleased to welcome Sir Peter Fahy, former Chief Constable of Greater Manchester Police. Sir Peter, welcome.
Hello, good afternoon.
I always find this a little confusing, and I'm deeply sceptical of it. We get this survey that comes out and says, overall, crime is going down yet again, and it says it's been doing this since about the 1990s. But actually, there's some pretty horrific crimes out there that seem to be going up and up. Knife crime offences. OK, shoplifting, when I say horrific, all right, might not be murder, but when you see some of the images of what's going on and on a daily basis, it's very hard to get the temperature of crime in this country. I mean, let me ask you candidly, do you feel it is getting out of control?
I think certain crimes, certainly there's a feeling of a greater lawlessness, but just to explain to your viewers, listeners, there are basically two ways of measuring crime. The first one is the police, people reporting things to the police and police recording those statistics. And overall, they're not terribly reliable because a lot of crime is not reported. And the second way of measuring crime is that you go out and interview. An independent company goes out and interviews a cross-section of the public and says, have you been a victim of crime over the past year? And that's been carried out for the past 30 years. And that is the survey which is showing that long-term decline in crime, particularly in things like burglary. And on the other hand, that survey obviously can't measure really things like child abuse, domestic abuse, and doesn't measure business crime. And I think what we're seeing here is absolutely, I do think there has been a long-term reduction in crime. I can only compare it to when I started in the 1980s. But on the other hand, there's changes in crime. We're seeing a huge increase in crime on the internet, huge increase in fraud. And I think what you're seeing is things like burglary is quite a difficult thing to do, and you're not going to make a huge amount of money out of it because a lot of the things we have in our homes now, laptops, phones, stuff like that, televisions, are not worth a lot of money, really, if they're stolen. But on the other hand, I think criminals have seen that it's quite easy to steal from shops. Obviously, in a way, with the cost of living crisis, that means that prices have actually gone up. Things like a tray of meat can be worth £10. And so it doesn't take a lot of effort to make a huge amount of money. Your chance of getting caught are pretty low. Even if you do get caught, the sanction is nowhere like if you commit robbery or burglary. So I think that's really what we're seeing.
Well, just dwell on that for a minute. For a minute, I thought you were almost going down the road of saying, well, with the cost of living crisis, it's understandable, but it's not that. You're not saying that, and I get that. It's getting to the point where you've got organised crime, not on mafia levels, but organised crime, stealing the steaks because they can trade them and make a profit. I mean, how extensive is this element of shoplifting to go in organised to make a profit?
There's always been, again, that element, there's always been, the people who wander in and steal a bottle of gin or hide something, and particularly children have always done a lot of shoplifting. But at the other end, you've always had these organised gangs who've turned up in a car park and then, taken a whole rail of clothing or something like that. And particularly we're very good at targeting high-value items. And it feels like we're seeing more of that at the moment, as I say, because a lot of the stuff is very, very expensive. It's easy to get rid of. It's not particularly identifiable. And I think that's what we're seeing. Some of those are prepared to use more violence. Whether there is more or not, I don't know. I think some of the companies have got better at actually measuring it and recording it and reporting it to the police. And what we're also seeing is there's a lot more CTV and a lot more images. So we see stuff that was going on in the 1980s, 1990s, but we weren't so aware of. But I think there is no question that it's really been made too easy to steal from shops. The chance of being caught is, too low, and the sanction is too low. And I think the police and the retailers and the government need to work together to try and address this, because at the end of the day, all of us are paying the price. And, we have to pay it in terms of, higher prices in the shops, because essentially, the shops just put up their prices to actually cover the losses that they're seeing.
And also, I think, and your point's well made, but I also think the violence that is being faced in some cases by, security guards, that this was never part of the territory. For them, shoplifting was generally someone walking out with a packet of sausages and you tap them on the shoulder and deal with it that way. That's long gone. And I notice that retail giants like Tesco, Sainsbury's, all of them, they are asking for a law to be made that makes assault, threatening or abusing a retail worker a specific crime, which I understand exists in Scotland. I know legislators can only make laws. They think that's going to be a deterrent. Do you think a standalone law like that would make a difference?
And I'm not sure it would practically. It's a sign, that Parliament takes it more seriously when you have those sorts of specific crimes. But at the end of the day, what we need is the police having the capacity to go out there and arrest these people. And we need the courts applying the right sanction. And I think, we need a range of different methods to control them. I'll be honest, when I was a chief constable, I was frustrated, that if you stole from a shop, you should be banned from all the shops in that area, with a criminal sanction. That meant if you went in again, you went to prison. So I think there should be things like that.
Why couldn't you get that sort of idea through? Because I reckon if you'd had a New York mayor back of sort of Rudy Giuliano style in charge, he would have said, go for it, Peter, off you go. What were the barriers to you implementing good ideas learnt from the front line?
I think a lot in Parliament and the Home Office don't realise the impact of the crime. Because it's not, in a lot of cases, the world that they're living in, and they rely too much on prison sentences. And prison sentences are fine, but I think you need other sanctions, and it's what is the control mechanism when people come out of prison. I think the other thing that you're seeing is a lot more drug crime. So I think, when you see some of these levels of violence which is being used, is because people are feeding drug habits. And at the same time, who knows how the hell you solve that one, but there's no question that the drug trade is more and more out of control. We're seeing more and more chaotic addicts, and they are feeding this as well, because, again, stealing from shops is an easy way to get some money to fuel their habits. So I think, there's more that can be done with technology. There's more that can be done with things like facial recognition, sharing photographs, all those sorts of things. But ultimately, it's a sign that we do think this is very serious, that shop workers shouldn't have to put up with this, that we, the public, shouldn't have to be paying when we have to pay at the till. Why should others, not have to pay? And therefore, it just needs everybody to work together to actually address this. But there's no question it is a serious issue for those working in shops.
So, Peter, the government have said the police should prosecute these cases. In a nutshell, have the police got enough numbers to be able to deal with what looks like, on these stats, about 1,000 shoplifting a day?
No, they haven't really. Certainly not every single one. There's no question they can do more. I think you've seen a lot from the Met this week about they're using facial recognition. I know various forces are trying to do more. But, again, the frustration when you are in charge of a police force is even, arrest for shoplifting takes a lot of time. You need to get somebody to that shop, 2 officers, you need them take to the custody block, you've got to interview them, you've got to put the file through. It can then tie up your officers for certainly 4 or 5, sometimes more hours, particularly if you then want to go and search their house to see what else they've been stealing. So I think, it's not just a matter of, the Home Secretary saying we must prosecute more. Absolutely, the whole process has got more complicated, and therefore there's no question that police don't have the capacity to reinvestigate every single crime and not prosecute them. And absolutely, Nick, when they're looking, well, we're going to deal with this shoplifting, or we're going to deal with this person who was mugged in the street. They will deal first with the person that's mugged in the street. And that's been the problem, is that shoplifting has almost been seen as a victimless crime and has been pushed down the priority list.
And we're all paying the price for it now, and it will come through in the bills. Sir Peter Fahy, former Chief Constable of Greater Manchester Police, thanks for joining us.